So people will start coming in. And I propose that we simply continue as we've just done, have a conversation amongst us so that they see that there's something going on. I can switch on some music here if you like. This one is pretty nice. As a background, so that it's not only about us talking, but it's also about some.
It really sounds like these online gamer channels as soon as the music is running in the background.
Yeah, that is something I haven't really understood so far. What is the sense of watching? Because people are live streaming while they are playing computer games, right?
Yeah.
And others watch that. I don't know.
But there are people that play and there are others that watch. I also see that amongst my kids. I see that some of my kids like to watch others play, while some rather like to play. I'm really more the play guy. I want to do it. While my daughter loves to just watch.
It's not good everybody, you know. And you just, go after bees. You just watch other beekeepers doing, taking care of their bees. To learn, to get inspiration, to admire, to have fun, just, to relax. So this makes absolute sense. The strange thing is that, we can just like that. You're older generation. For my kids as well, this is like natural.
And it's like somebody's there with you, so you're not alone if something is on the stream. And also, I see that you learn a lot, right? You learn a lot from watching.
Let me just say to the audience, to the people who already are in the call. So if you just joined and dropped in, you're in the right place. We are going to start in a minute or two. So don't leave. Stay tuned. If you like, drop us a line where you dial in from, where you are listening to this call, to this webinar. And what also would be interesting is if you have any experience with research projects, especially with ZIM, especially with international corporations. Hi, Sasha. Great. Nice to have you. So where do you call from? Berlin in your case, I guess. And is there experience with funding project, innovation projects, especially international ones? Because that's what we're going to talk about in a minute. And there is, from the housekeeping perspective, if you have questions, which you hopefully have, please join the conversation. Use the comments. We can't hear you. You can't join the conversation verbally, but you can definitely join the conversation here via the comments. Use the comment section. Post your questions there. If it is suitable in the course of the presentations, I will put the questions on the screen and ask the presenter to answer them. And we definitely go over the questions at the end of the presentation. So no question will stay unanswered. Well, under the condition that we have the answer. That's for sure. Okay. Great. With that said, for the people who just joined, leave a short comment on where you dial in from. Let us know about your experience with funding projects and innovation projects in an international context. And let me shortly introduce the program for today, or the two speakers. We have Attila Wohlbrand from Consider It, and we have Jan Kaczmarek, who founded his funding agency in Poland already 17 years ago. So a lot of experience that we have with our two presenters today. And without much further ado, let me hand over to Attila to tell us about the agenda and lead us into the presentations. And once more, the hint, if there are any questions, please use the comments here, put your question in the comment, and we are going to answer them for sure. Attila, your turn.
Thank you. Thank you. So just to wrap it up, to show where we're going in a nutshell, of course, we're talking about the collaborative R&D projects between Poland and Germany. There is a call out there right now that is quite interesting if you're looking for collaboration, because it actually boosts the funding rate that you can apply for in Germany. And we'll also look at the Polish side. So what we have here now with Jan is the possibility to have the perspective from both sides and bring in the networks and bring in the capacity to really make good proposals here. For the agenda, we have just one quick slide. So we'll have a quick talk about ourselves. Jan will introduce him, then I will introduce me, and we'll talk a bit about our companies. And then we introduce the call. I'll do that, show what's the call about, and then have the perspectives from the Polish company side. What do they have to bring into this collaboration? And then for German companies, as we have the national expertise directly here in this call, feel free to shoot us with any questions, and we are happy to answer them. And then we also have some time at the end to answer any more questions. Yeah, Jan, with that, I'll give you, I'll hand it over. You have one slide to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Attila. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jan Kaczmarek. I'm the co-founder of Execute. It's a grant agency based in Warsaw, but we have some presence in other countries across Europe. I founded the company back in 2007, and it's been more than almost 17 years of working in public funding. My public funding experience is even beyond that, because I just established the company already working with R&D funds, both in Poland and across Europe. What we basically help our clients, and these are typically deep tech, high tech innovation companies, is to get funded from three main sources. The chief one is our grants, R&D and innovation, research and development and innovation grants. Then there is the way to just get early revenues. This is how we help innovators to access their early adopters. And also we help companies to present their ventures in front of investors. So we basically cover the whole lifespan of innovative project fundability track. We start from the concept through proposal development to execution and commercialization. So this is basically it. We have more than 20 consultants, experience in various technical fields. Most of our project managers are PhDs, or they at least have some substantial experience in different areas of science and technology. We've raised more than 200 million euro altogether. Most of our clients return back to us asking for more advice, more help, more support. So we have a repetitive success rates that are double or triple as the average success rates in different programs. Today, I'm especially, I would like to present the perspective of the Polish funding agency, which is NCBR, National Center for Research and Development, organization that was established a few years after I established my company, because before we worked with other programs. But now it's actually the center for R&D funding for companies in Poland. So I will just speak from this perspective and hundreds of projects our team has covered by this organization. Thank you very much, Attila, and take it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jan. Just a few words to consider it and myself. So I am Attila Wohlbrand. I did my PhD at the German Aerospace Center. I'm an engineer with focus on software development. Been working at the project agency for a while, and I've also been working in research institutions for project management of research projects for quite a while, and I'm now happy to be consultant here to support companies to really build their own project ideas and get them funded. The consider it itself has 12 years of experience for themselves in the perspective of software development. We have now 50 employees, a huge network all over Europe, more than 111 partners. It's a nice number. It looks nice. The original focus was actually not on funding, but on technology, and we're still doing this. We're a lot of success in the vehicle to anything communication and all kinds of other things in that area. But we also have the funding. We were very successful in funding to start with, and said, let's see. We see other companies that struggle with that, so we are building our own funding branch now for a couple of years, and do funding from the acquisition to the execution and also commercialization, so that we have this all under one hood and can really show the actual process of a project getting realized and commercialized. With that, I will get into the call. The call has been published late March. It's the first Polish-German call for joint research and development projects, and the deadline is by 30th of September. That means we could, of course, submit earlier. And it's the interesting part of this call is really that it's supported by the NCBR from Poland and the BMWK, the Ministry for Economy and Climate in Germany, that are actually focusing on already existing programs. So we know quite well how these things play out and how this works. And this is what we will go into detail now. The scope of the call is for development of innovative products, processes, technical services with high market potential. That means we are focusing not on ground research. We are really focusing on research that can be realized and go to market. We are developing prototypes within these projects, but they are open for any branch, open for any focus, so that we can really see the different areas that can play out. It needs to have a technical focus, so it cannot be social innovations, but anything that can be realized on a technical level is eligible to play a role in this, and we can really build projects from that. The funding decision is expected by May 31st, so that gives us a plan. That's next year, May 31st. So in 1 year, project start. That means we see projects running for 2 to 3 years. We have a good understanding of what the project scopes are and the project size. From the German part, the funding comes from the Zentrales Innovationsprogramm Mittelstand. I'll go into detail on that. And the evaluation is done by one of the project agencies that runs this project for very long, a couple of years already. Is the IF Projektträger, die Projekt GmbH sitting in Berlin, that we have a good connection with. That is actually then looking at the proposals on the German side. Together with the Polish side, the funding is coming from the InnoGlobal program that Jan will talk about, and the evaluation is then done by the NCBR. The procedures, as already mentioned, they are specified in the different programs and the different guidelines, so that we know that these two things are pretty much put together, and then we have the common ground as this first German-Polish call to bring this along. The funding is according to the national funding schemes. So on the German side, fundable costs per company are up to 450k euros, that is, coming from the SIM program. And on the Polish side, the project costs of the Polish part, that means all the companies combined that are Polish, are 400,000 zloty up to 1.5 million zloty on the Polish side, coming from the InnoGlobal program. And complementary funding from participants' own resources can be realized, and also funding from other project agencies do not guarantee the funding from the other side. But in my experience from international programs, we see that we, of course, try to make it work in these collaborations. Every partner needs to have innovative parts, but if we see that there's already a positive indication from the other side, the project agencies really try to make these things happen, which they usually always do. Their project agencies are not our enemies. They really try to make these projects work. They check this against the guidelines. And I say we have to work together with them to make these things happen. Minimum requirements, the projects have to contribute to development of commercial projects, processes, or technology-based services. That means no ground research, as I already said, but also it's the development of commercial projects. That means it's not going to market, but it's really prototype development, and then going to market is the next step. Every partner brings their own parts into this, and we need at least one Polish and one German small, medium-sized enterprise. This comes from the two different programs that we have brought together. But we can also bring in universities from these two countries. We can also bring in more companies, larger companies with their own funding, or we could also bring in other companies from other countries all over Europe. That is totally possible to bring and build larger consortia in this context if we align with the different perspectives. Additional partners or subcontractors are welcome. That depends on the funding schemes. We'll look into this depending on the funding schemes on the different countries. What we need is an obvious advantage and differentiation value proposition resulting from the cooperation. That means it's not just what I want to do in Germany, I copy it into Poland, or I want to have the market to be also a Polish market. Every company needs to have their own share in the actual innovation process, and that needs to be carved out and described. And we'll work together with you on this. The project duration is 24 to 36 months, and we need a balanced technological contribution by the participants from both countries. That means everybody has to do their innovation. Then on the balance, that's a little bit numbers here. Coming from the German program, what we need is each funded partner must plan less than 70% of the total person month in bilateral projects, or less than 50% of the total person month in multilateral projects. That means one partner cannot be much bigger in concern of the efforts that they spend in the project part. And from the Polish side, there's the restriction coming from 30 to 70% of the total budget must be secured to the Polish partners as the combination, so that we have to, in a way, look how can we manage a project, how can that project be filled with more companies if that grows in. But these are pretty much the restrictions on the balance requirements that we have to fulfill. And with that, we are on the last slide for the actual call, and then we'll look into detail for the different countries. The process looks like this. We'll have a common proposal in English and a draft consortium agreement that we have to prepare and send this to the IF. That's a German project agency that will receive the applications. And additional to that, we need to file the national applications as usual for the ZIM and for the InnoGlobal program that are in a way on top. And of course, the project agencies always want early consultation. That means what we'll always do is have a chat with them, talk with them, and see that this projects actually work out so that we don't have any surprises that we can prevent as good as possible. Then on the national levels, we submit the individual SIM application, and on the Polish level, we submit the InnoGlobal program application as usual. The process here doesn't change on that way. So it's in addition to the national fundings, you have the English proposal and the draft consortium agreement that comes on top. And with that, I know the questions are coming a little bit late in this, but I would hand over to Jan, talking a little bit about the Polish perspective of this call and the requirements for the call from the Polish side. If you have any questions, just put them in the slides and we'll put them in the chat and we'll address them later on. Jan, any more things to address first on the actual call? If I've missed anything, you want to detail anything, and then.
Yes. I just, thank you very much. It was an excellent overview. I think everyone now has realized how it all works. So we have two governments that agree on certain top level rules that Attila has just presented. And now what they basically do, they implement it through their own instruments. In case of Germany, it's an old, well-known instrument. In case of Poland, it's an instrument that is called InnoGlobal, and it's a third call actually of this program. So it's not new, but as a joint collaboration, it's for the first time. So the InnoGlobal is a program that NCBR, our National Center for Research and Development, uses to actually finance all sorts of this bilateral R&D collaboration between countries. In this case, we are talking about Polish and German collaboration, of course. So you can, if I can, yes.
Yeah.
So we're talking about basic rules like, for whom, who can benefit, and what's in it for me. So basically, InnoGlobo is quite widely defined. So I would say that here we will have to look for limitations that more stem from the German part, because InnoGlobo basically is open to any country, and it's open to any sort of participants. It can be a small and micro and medium-sized company. It can be a university or institutes. It can be big enterprises, or combinations of both under established consortia. But the minimum requirement is one foreign partner. In our case, it would be at least one partner, at least one SME from Germany. But if I understood you correctly, Attila, correct me if I'm wrong, you need to have an SME partner in Poland, which would mean that we actually, for this one, we have to have a partnership of at least 2 SMEs coming from Poland and from Germany. And the rest we can build up.
Yeah, this is also exactly how I understand it. We need 2 SME partners, but actually from the German SIM program, the collaboration could also be with a foreign partner that is not an SME, so not addressing the actual call. It would be possible to build InnoGlobo and SIM collaborations that would be between a Polish university or a large-size company and a German SME, but that would not address the call, because the call really says German SME, Polish SMEs. This is my understanding.
Same here. So if you want to, yes, these things happen, especially if we have first call. So this is a sort of a pilot, and all those discrepancies between national rules might come up. And this is how this is our role also to clarify that. We are typically in constant contact with the funding program. So if there is any simple mistakes by people who program these schemes, we can always clarify it in the process of consultations. But it's evident that in the best case scenario, we have an SME from Germany and Poland. And we can have other partners as just additional third, fourth, and so on partner. But because this is, the rest is a little bit repeating the call, because InnoGlobo is quite generic framework. So it can be, any field of research, it can be any country, it can be any actually discipline. Of course, there is this limitation of key. It's called national key specializations. But these are in Poland defined quite wide. So of course it has to be an R&D project which leads to development of a new product. Typically, it's a new product that involves technology. So you have to have a solution that pushes the state of the art in technology ahead. It has to be in the area that is on the list of these national smart specializations. But as I said, in Poland, these are they are defined quite largely. So I haven't ever met a case where it would be hard to actually locate any project that has technical nature and is known areas of science and technology, not to find a relevant dot that can be linked to national smart specialization. So this is just it's not a big issue. But at the same time, because I will talk about it later, because the budgets that the program gives is not very high. It is rather for self-contained, very lean projects. So that's why it's just 5 work packages. In other instruments, in National Center for Research and Development, you have 10 work packages or more, which are more massive projects. You might, if you are joining us today from Poland, you might know that there is now a new wave of calls coming in from the new perspective of structural funds like FANG, including Fast Track program, which is the flagship program of National Center for Research and Development. These are massive, huge projects. We are here talking about something, smart, small, compact, and very aimed at the synergies created between these partners. But at the same time, if you have a technology that requires time to elaborate, you have space for that, because it can be a project that is between 24 to 36 months. Okay, maybe not the full life cycle of a life science project, but clearly, one phase of research and development can fit in. Yes. Of course, in these kind of programs, and I can here tell you a little bit more about criteria. You evaluate. You will be okay. This is important, maybe, that this is a competitive call. So you're going to compete against other consortia, trying to get this money from this call. Can I ask for the next slide? Yeah. So you see that the allocation for this scheme, for this first edition, is not so big. I mean, there is space for funding maybe 5, 6, 7 projects, depending, how they want to spread the money. Sometimes it happens that they increase this allocation. If they receive really good applications, they can always do it. But initially, it seems that they are testing it. So they want to check how it works, maybe in the context of Polish-German collaboration as well. So I would expect that first, it will not be very highly oversubscribed call. So it's like a niche thing, which we at Execute really like, those kind of calls that are not mainstream, but just, smart, uncovered gems of opportunity, where you can just quickly, with not that a lot of effort invested up front in the application, you can have a quick win. So what you can actually get is an R&D funding at the level of 400k zloty, which will be an equivalent of less than 100,000 euro, up to 1.5 million zloty, which will be something around 30,000 euro, which is funding. So the budget will be higher depending on what kind of reimbursement rate on costs you qualify for. And this is something Attila has already covered, that we need to find a balance, and we cannot have a project where one party is really taking the most of it. It has to be balanced in the share, in the budget. So as working with NCBR is always working within the same framework of R&D funding rules as all other programs. You might know that in Europe, we simply have like one regulation that is a EU level regulation that rules how state aid on R&D can be given to companies. This is just based on common market anti-competition law. And this is just that this program just follows the maximum amounts that these EU level resolution actually gives allows you for. So for research part, you can get up to 80% funding if you are a small company, and then for development up to 60%. But if you are a large company, you only can get up to 65% for the industrial research costs, and only 30% for development costs if you use all the bonus points. But this is just always the discussion of how you can qualify the bonus, and this is the work of the consultants also to guide you with that. For research and technological organizations, it's 100% reimbursement rate. Great. Can I ask you for the next and I think final slide?
I think that's the last one. We had the one.
So let me just, one thing I have forgotten to mention is that when you are evaluated here, this was, as I said, this is a competitive call, and the main criteria we are going to, apart from some formalities, and the main criteria against you will be evaluated here. You will receive points, maximum 25, are the following. You just have to have excellence. I mean, you have to be on a very high level of innovation to get maximum points there. So yeah, you just excellence, scientific and research excellence is the first evaluation criteria. Then project feasibility, which is yeah, how you plan your work plan, what is the strength of the team, etc. Then you have the impact of the project. Of course, this is this typical element, both in terms of like, yeah, change for industry or for your company, but also in economic terms, how this can create value for you as a company in terms of revenues, but for the employment, etc. So and finally, that the quality of the consortium and the quality of the setup you establish with your partners, and another criterion you can get 5 points for. And finally, you have to have of course, you have to be in line with the financial rules, and your project topic have to be fitted into those national smart specialization areas that I said. It's not hard to actually tick that off. Thanks. Over to you, Attila.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for the presentation. I have actually one thing to say, not to scare away anybody that considers doing research. Most of these points are actually about how you describe them, and most often that's one of the most crucial parts, is to really describe it in a way that it's understood. And I do understand myself in my way of being a consultant to really do the translation between what the project is and how the project needs to be described to work best on this sort of research funding market. It's not that everything that Jan just said needs to be done by you, but of course, this is something that we are happy to support you with.
Absolutely.
One question that just popped into my mind: is there any other costs involved in this InnoGlobal program? Are there any lump sums as part of this funding?
It's all based on the reimbursement. So you basically, how you do it, you just budget the project. So you just list, typically it will be personal cost, of course, materials you need for coming up with proof of concepts, prototypes, etc. Materials that you might need, and also IP, external IP you have to buy in order to have a pilot installation. Then you would have also some indirect cost coverage. And yeah, so everything that is directly connected with the activity, you just budget it. And then depending on what is the reimbursement rate that is applicable to you as the type of applicant, then you just do the calculations, and this is how you arrive at the funding contribution from the agency. The rest you have to cover from your own budget.
Yeah, understood. Thank you, Jan. Moving on to the ZIM program. Christopher, anything? I just saw that you popped in. Feel free. Or was it by mistake?
Christopher is joining us.
Are you clicking?
Yeah, I thought you would switch to the questions. Therefore, it was.
I don't see any questions. Have there been questions?
I have some questions, but continue, and we answer the questions in the end. There was a technical glitch here. I'm gonna resolve that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Good to see you. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. I'll move on. So the ZIM program, I use this little pictogram of the cinnamon because Zimt in German is cinnamon, and if anybody associates this with ZIM, they are wrong here. Just a joke on the side, but let's dig into that one. It's one of the programs, one of the longest running programs in Germany, one of the most successful. And just want to pop some numbers to show how successful this program is. I did some analysis of the evaluation that the ZIM program did in 2019 of the 10 years prior to that. And they actually have 550 million euros annual funding handed out by the ZIM. In that durations, it's 2.8 thousand projects approved annually, 2.1 thousand new R&D employees annually funded with this program. The duration of the project application until project start is 7 days, which is also very unique. That means you can start at the moment when you hand it in. This is not the case if we do it with this Polish-German call, because we have to wait for the approval in that part. That slows you down. But the actual time for approval in the ZIM is 91 days. So they are also quick and really looking into this, having 3 months for the duration that this runs. The funding probability in ZIM is 64%. That means more than every second application really gets funded. So that's really, that doesn't say that the margins are low, but it's well understood how these things work, what's necessary to do a project. And if you're actually starting to write a proposal, we are quite confident that we can secure that funding in the ZIM program. Also, one fact that that I like as a consultant is 55% of the approved projects hired consultants, 30% of the rejected projects hired consultants. That means consultants do have an effect on success. Jan, you actually measured that. I liked it in your first slide to really have a number there. Then two more numbers on that part. They're also graphs, but don't the graphs are in German. Sorry, I did not translate them. I actually copied them from the actual analysis that I used here. That was an external evaluation done by University in Vienna, and they saw that 51% of the applicants were actually first-time beneficiaries. That's a very good number. That means it's really a program also for new companies that are securing their first governmental research and development funding. And 73% of the companies have less than 50 employees. That means it's really also a program for small companies. So don't be scared to go for national funding. This is why I usually say this is the entry into governmental funding. Use the ZIM program. This is very specific to ZIM now. It's not for this German-Polish call. And I use on purpose, I use the slides that I usually do to promote ZIM, to also make clear the differences where we now have in mind the Polish perspective. The ZIM, you can usually apply anytime for funding, and you get, my experience shows 2 to 6 months before project start, you should start actually with crafting of the proposal, thinking about the project, these sort of things, considering that you can start at the moment when you hand it in on your own risk. That's a good number here. With this call, we see we need more time. We can only expect results by end of May next year, so that we can start the projects only after that.
Maybe
Any company,
I can immediately comment on that, because it seems like really a long perspective. There's always an option, as you said, but I want to emphasize it, that you start the project on your own risk, right? And then you can reimburse back the costs if you are retained, and if you're rejected, then okay. So it's always good to consider projects and collaborations you plan anyhow. You can always financially de-risk them by just putting them into a joint proposal and submitting. And if you are going to do it anyway, I mean, it's just an extra benefit you can get, and you can use this money to do something else actually.
I understand what you mean, but my actual project agency experience shows that if you tell the agencies we will do it anyhow, you're not eligible for funding anymore. So it's really just, of course, meaning doing research and applying for funding doesn't mean that you do not need this to make it work.
Yeah.
So in Germany, any company registered in Germany can apply that has less than 500 employees. This also applies for this German-Polish call. Universities and medium-sized enterprises that have less than 1,000 employees can be working together with these SMEs in collaborations, and they also get funded. And it's open to all sectors, open to all technologies. That's also very nice in the ZIM program. We'll look at the percentage of how much every company can get only in a tabular manner. We're not going into detail, just to give you an impression of where you can fight yourself. That means research funding rates are 25 to 60%. That's what we can expect. Research entities get 100%, just like the one in Poland. One interesting part is that you are not getting any funding for material, not getting any funding for IP software, whatever you need. It's all within the other costs. They say you get 100% on top of the personnel costs as indirect costs, and that covers anything that you need in addition to personnel costs, and it also includes raises and personnel costs. That's important to consider, so that at the moment that you apply, this is where they fix the personnel rates, and then that remains throughout the project rate. But what you can do is you can have contracts with third parties, and you can have R&D contracts also funded within this rates. For a single project, that's of course not collaboration, but for single projects, 550K for the project volume for individual projects, and 450 for collaboration projects. And the maximum size for ZIM is 2.3 million euros for a project on the ZIM side. So it's also not as high as possible. The actual proposal, the actual call now for the Polish German does not state that 2.3 million. I find that interesting. Will be interesting to try more German companies to see if we can exceed that. But of course, that's a challenge. Research institutions have another margin that's 220K, and we'll look at the percentage next. We're not getting into detail. Just as the larger your company gets, the lower the funding rates get. It's also what Jan already said. Interesting here is that in German collaborations, you usually get up to 55%, and with this international cooperation, meaning bringing in a Polish company, you as a German company get more funding. That means more money out of the same amount of project that the funding agencies hand over to you. This is between 5 to 10% more than what you would expect in a national cooperation, and up to 15% more than what you would expect in a single project. That's quite interesting to really see. Maybe it makes sense to not do it by yourself, but bring in a Polish company to boost your project, and then even boost what you can receive as funding rates to foster the actual collaboration. That's
Attila, can I have a comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because our listeners might be wondering now. I said, okay, there are the same rules on the EU level, but we clearly see that funding rates for German partners are lower than on the Polish side. I think I think that bringing in here clarity would also get our listeners some value. So why is it so? Because the EU regulation defines the upper limits, and then it's up to the given country or the agency to actually propose an instrument. They cannot give more, but they can give less if they want to use their available funds differently. So the German agency chosen to have these rules. They are within the maximum amounts that the EU regulation provides, but they don't want to hit the top threshold. And meanwhile, the Polish agency is more generous. I don't know. They just give the maximum they can according to the EU rules. This is why it's not a complete mess.
Yeah.
There is a logic behind it.
Yeah, maybe also from the German perspective, and especially for the ZIM, they are focusing mainly on development projects and not so much on industrial research, and this makes the difference of 60% to 80% at the end, right? Because if you really do experimental research and you do the development part, they're not distinguishing between these two in this call. They're really saying these are the funding rates. They're fixed. Doesn't matter what kind of innovative product you're developing. These are the funding rates. So they don't have the hassle to decide, is it this or that? And that makes the application much easier. But of course, then the funding rates are fixed, and then they're fixed on the lower level, not the higher level.
Okay, so they are
that
fixed
makes the application easier.
Makes sense. So they are fixed at the maximum level for technological development, not the maximum level for research, which is 80%. Makes absolute sense. If you are a company, of course, because if you are a research
company, if you're in a research institution, you get 100%.
And it's okay with the rules. That's great.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Cool. So moving toward the end of the presentation, of course, there are many side notes that we have to look into. When is it possible? When are you eligible to get funding? And we're happy to discuss this with you. I also did the presentation 2 weeks ago on this channel. If you want to click into the LinkedIn, it's in German though, but then you can have a look at the different criteria that are necessary to be met to really get ZIM funding. Not getting into that, but happy to discuss it in detail with you if you're interested. So I'm skipping through that, and just 2 more slides on the technical innovation part, that's also something that is quite tough to meet and describe in the Zim application, and also in my knowledge as from the project agencies. It's always the differentiation between product innovation and technical innovation, and that's something that it's like we're preaching this. The difference is that there needs to be a technical challenge involved in developing something within these programs. So it's not that your usual software development can simply be marked, yeah, it has the word development in it, and then it's fine. It really needs to exceed the state of the art, and therefore it needs research and development, and it needs to have a considerable technical risk involved, so that we can really say this is a technical innovation and that it's eligible for the funding in this rate. Well, of course, this is something that we will have to dig into more detail. This is also a lot about understanding how these funding mechanisms work and describing the right things, asking the right questions to you to guide you in describing these things most adequate. Pretty much the aim is really improve not only the function of your product, but also improve what state of the art can actually give, what state of the art can manage. And one thing that works very good to me, and I will also only tease it, is this, I call it the house of cards of technical risks. Because if you consider that your technical risk is something that you need to describe to really get the funding, and that's something that I always hear, yeah, we just have to have a technical risk, then we are eligible. The technical risk sits on the very top of this house of cards. And if any other of the other parts are not working well, if there are any other things not really described well in the proposal, then this whole thing breaks down. This is what Jan said with the points that you get from the different parts. Yeah, this is another approach to see it, but without the cards, give it a little bit more a boom. So when anything of this is not working, then your proposal will fail. And what we are working on here is to really see, can we fill in all the other parts of this card house to make the proposal in it solid and stable. Okay, one last thing about the process. What we want to do together with Jan is really do some matchmaking for the call, bring together companies from the German and Polish side, have the commission from us and from them on the different parts to really help you on the actual local applications, guide together, bring together the English application, and then do the application writing, final review submission, and then the grant. There's this one intermediate loop in the Zim program that I would really like to use also in this part, is to only describe a 3-page draft that we can then hand over to the IEF and discuss with the IEF quite directly, saying, look, this is the innovation. Does that meet your criteria? Because they're really supporting the drafting of these applications. This does not automatically say you're eligible for funding, but it gives us the possibility to consult directly with the project executing agencies and the people that will later on also do the judgment about the application and its eligibility for funding. And that helps a lot to really to underline that. And this is a process that, of course, we have to start as early as possible if we want to have the proposal ready by 30th of September. And with that, it was a great pleasure. I really love this sparring part. It's like having a podcast together, Jan. Great experience. Makes a lot of fun.
It was fun. Thank you very much.
And happy to have some questions.
Yes, thank you to both of you. It was a pleasure to listen to both of you. And here we go with the questions. I'm going to display them. First one is here, should be popping in a second. Where is it? From Raphael. Where is the grant application evaluated? Who could explain about that in a few words?
I can take that, and Attila, you can always, jump in with your perspective. I mean, this is a type of a call that does not have central evaluation. So you will just have to fit into the criteria, local criteria. So you are defining the joint project, but then details go into national application, and then these national applications are evaluated. And you have to have positive evaluation both in both agencies to get funded.
Super. Thank you. We continue with the next question, which is, where do we have it? Here we go. And I mentioned there was a glitch, so it now appears under my name, and I can't tell you who really asked this question, but I picked it out of the chat. Couldn't allocate the name. Doesn't matter. How does the international setup and character influence the administrative workload and complexity? So I guess this refers to, is it much more complex than just a national call? Is it by factor 2, or is it the same complexity? Who can answer on that?
Well, I think each of us has to answer separately. So, Attila, how is it for German partners?
For the German partners, it's pretty much the same application that you would do as the usual collaboration call. So you fill in the same files, the same forms, have to prepare for your company all the different things, because every company has to do their own application anyways. There's this small overhead of applying this or filling in this English form. And I had a look at that one. It's not too small, so there's some amount in that, but as soon as we have an understanding of the common project, and this is the first thing that we'll do anyway, filling that one in is something that is more on the on the effort side and not really on any complexity problems. There's this collaboration agreement that needs to be realized, but that's also something that we have on national calls and on national part of SIM. So I do not really see that it's much more efforts. In that way, working together between Germany and Poland, of course, needs new languages. There's a barrier in between that you have to be aware of. That you have to find a common ground to work with each other. It's not just pretend to work together, but that should really be a benefit. And I think that's the actual challenge that you have to be aware of.
Yes, absolutely. I can just add that there is no central agency on top that actually you would have to report to. So this also, if you don't have an extra body that is after you, it doesn't create, a lot of extra burden. You just do your project as if you were doing a national project, and all the reporting, all the financial cost claims, everything. This is just how the national agencies mandate. You don't have, extra stuff on you.
It also works the same way if you would not apply for this call, but really apply for international funding within SIM and find a collaboration partner that would be located in another country, securing their own funds. You can still apply for the SIM funding, and that would not be any restriction on that. That way, it works the same way.
Yes. In case of InnoGlobo, you of course could have a partner from whatever country that is. That Poland maintains diplomatic relationships. It's even that broad. But at the same time, the only thing actually you have to provide for partner is a form in English and in Polish that you confirm that this partner will have funding option locally. And depending on the country, this is how you explain how you will get this part. So you have to have it secured and understood and explained already before the submission.
Okay, so next question regarding the starting date of the projects, I guess. There was something on the slides, I think, about funding decision in April next year. Does that mean projects can also start in April immediately, or is there a delay?
Yes. So the answer is as follows. In principle, when you have the decision, you are sure that this money will come, right? Of course, there is then the moment when you have to fill in the forms, sign the contract with your national agency, etc. So you can have additional time actually to get ready and start. But if you want, you can start straight away, do the formalities, and then with the first cost claim, we just cover all the period. Even more, you can start this project anytime, at least, in InnoGlobo. I don't know, maybe there are limitations. Attila will tell us in a second from the German perspective, but in InnoGlobo, once the project is submitted, this is a general rule, the cost eligibility period starts. Then it's up to you if you want to take your own risk and do the project, the first phase for it, for instance, the first year, and then for the only in the second year of the project you will get the refund. It's up to you basically. It's the matter of risk rather than the matter of some rules. But the rule is that you cannot start the work before you submit the application.
It's the same in
Yeah.
Germany. And it would be interesting, of course, to clarify with the agencies if there are any restrictions due to this call, if they would ask us to wait for the project start, but I would not expect it because it's not in any of the guidelines.
Okay, super. And then one final question. How can we best get started, and how would a step-by-step approach look like? I think you partially answered that, but maybe explicitly, what would be a good next step now?
The short answer, reach out to us as quickly as you can, and we are happy to link you together with companies, see what's your project about, what kind of company you need, and we'll go from there.
So first step would be and book an appointment with either one of you. So maybe for German companies, more with Attila, Polish companies with Jan. But anyways, it doesn't matter who you reach out to. And you link the countries, you bring together the consortia and make sure that the whole thing then takes off.
Yes, it's always, that this first step a little bit depends on where are you sitting now. You might be in a different position. You might already have a natural partner in Poland or in Germany. And this is, then it's a different story. Then you just have a concept that you would like to do in an international setup because of various reasons. Like you would like to reach out to this market, or you would like to broaden your scope of your research work or your product, or you would like to have some easier first-hand, access to local resources or whatever. I mean, they might be very, number of reasons why you actually want to engage in this international R&D collaboration. And then you can just start with, expressing your needs. Actually, what do you need? I mean, what do you expect from what you want to achieve? And then we can just respond to that, how the program actually fits into what you really want to expect, and we can also inspire you what kind of other things you might add it. And then this is the process we typically do, that we start with understanding your needs, then understanding how the program can fulfill it or expand it, and then putting a project structure together that is that it actually becomes a fundable project concept. And then you rest. Attila has already explained how it works.
Very good. Okay, thank you both. That were all the questions that we collected in the chat. Thanks again for the presentation. Has anything come up that you would like to add to your presentations or to the answers that you provided?
No, I'm fine, absolutely fine. It was a great experience. Thank you for having me here today.
Super. Also, thank you to you both, Attila and Jan. Have a nice afternoon, and all the audience, reach out to the experts, get your appointments booked, and get started. Chances is there. And thank you for joining us today. Have a nice afternoon.
Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Mustafa. Thanks for hosting.
Attila.